This week, we're going to hack some pancakes with Lesley Carhart from Motorola Solutions. Beau Bullock, even. His tech segment is pre-recorded on bypassing AV on Android devices, and that'll air for our technical segment this evening. In the security news this week, D-Link gets slapped with a lawsuit. Newsflash, Flash has more vulnerabilities. A few politically charged news stories. Don't make the sign for peace if you're using biometrics. The shadow brokers retire. Leave us with a very nice gift, or several gifts, actually. And a new tool for tunneling DNS using PowerShell. All of that and more on this edition of Paul's Security Weekly.
This is Security Weekly. For security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly.
Brought to you by Tenable Network Security, creators of Nessus, the world's best vulnerability scanner. Jumpstart your security program today and evaluate Security Center CV, the continuous security monitoring solution. For more information, visit them on the web at tenable.com. The average time between being hacked and realizing you've been hacked is 1 year. Can you afford to let an intruder roam your network for that long? Can your company weather the fallout when this comes to light? Black Hills Information Security can help find the bad guys in your network and train you to do it yourself. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to find out how a hunt teaming engagement can help you find a persistent threat in your network. The SANS Institute, the most trusted source for computer certification training and research. Visit sans.org to explore their full curriculum and latest training offers.
Welcome to the show. I'd like to introduce you to our host, a man who looked at the veggie pizza and said, "Oh, not nearly enough meat." Paul Asadoria.
Welcome, everyone, to this edition of Paul's Security Weekly. This is episode 496. Very excited to be here this evening, joined here in studio by the illustrious Larry Pesce from InGuardians. Welcome, Larry.
Yay. 2 weeks in a row.
In studio.
It's crazy.
Very nice. Looks like we have a cast of characters on the lines via Skype.
Don't we always?
Yes, we do. Mr. Jack Daniel is here with us. Welcome, Jack.
Thank you very much. Good to be back with you.
Joff Thayer is here with us. Welcome, Joff.
Why, thank you, Paul, and g'day this evening. Very good to be here again.
Mr. Jeff Mann is here with us. Welcome, Jeff. Oh, Jeff's on mute. We saw him wave. We didn't hear him, though. It's okay. He hit the cough button.
Sometimes this is the most intelligent thing he said.
And we missed it. We missed it. We have episode 500 coming up pretty soon, in about a month.
Yay!
And I think most of the cast and crew will be here in studio. I think maybe with the exception of Carlos, everyone will be here. Mm-hmm. I think is if we count heads, that's what it'll end up. So it's not going to be your typical episode 500. We're actually doing like a little invite-only event. I thought I'd do something different this year, basically because we didn't have a lot of time to plan the way this episode fell. And our operations manager actually just started last December. Sam just started last December. So
not enough time.
Yeah, we were doing like year-end sponsorship stuff and then said, oh, we're doing episode 500. And everyone was like, well, we want to all come to the studio. I'm like, yes, all come to the studio. We'll figure out what to do with ourselves once we all get here. But we will do an episode that evening. And anyone, hopefully, we'll have room for everyone that shows up to be on the show.
Awesome.
Of course, Sam's like, you said you were going to have like a small little event. She's like, I counted 45 people that you were inviting. I'm like, yeah, it's all good. It's all good. And she's like, and then you just keep adding people. I'm like, well, I feel bad for people getting left out.
Yeah, well, it's like a wedding. You invite 300 people, 150
That's right.
show up.
Exactly. So we'll have
the rest send gifts.
Yeah.
So send gifts.
I don't know. That's a danger. You saw who we were inviting. We might get some very interesting gifts.
That could be a lot of fun.
It could be.
Okay, so send gifts.
We should do like an InfoSec Secret Santa or something next year. That would be fun.
Yeah.
I am super excited. I have booked my flights today, so I am ready. I'm locked in. We're going to have a great time.
It's going to be fun.
I think I'll play the role of drunk uncle.
Drunk uncle.
Drunkle.
Yeah,
we'll call him Drunkle.
Drunkle, that's
your new nickname, Jack.
Role.
Drunkle. Do we have IT Pro has an announcement. Basically, as of February 1st, all current premium members will be granted the highest membership level available. So make sure you go sign up at itpro.tv/Security Weekly and use the code SW30. InfoSec World, which is an awesome conference, your 10% discount code that we are promoting is OS17-SW. This will give them, the listeners, 10% off the main conference or the World Pass. I'm not sure what the difference is for that.
Clearly,
but
one is the world.
The world. You get a pass to the world. Imagine that. The graphic went away, but it's in April 3rd through the 4th is the... we need to put that in the show notes. Because I'm like old now, I can't read it. 3rd through the 5th. Is that what that says, Larry?
Yep, it does.
And you're older than me, and you can read it.
But see, I have these glasses.
You have glasses.
You know what the next step is, Paul? Glasses.
Listen to you, Paul, claiming you're old.
I know.
Come on,
well,
man. You're killing me.
All you fine folks help me feel young. Thanks for that.
But you know what? I will say that this mohawk is probably going to be one of the last hurrahs, and I'm holding on to it for as long as possible because we discovered this summer that I have a quickly receding hairline.
Yes,
and
you do.
You get to do the reverse mohawk eventually.
Exactly.
Reverse mohawk.
And I'm just going to have to do the Ed SCOTUS and suck
Jack,
it up.
I think it was Wendy Nather that said, "Oh, it's so cute, your age." She's like, "We're going to send you a Fisher Price laptop as your gift." Like, I can't wait. I'm excited. Let's bring on our guest for this evening. We're very excited to have Lesley Carhart here on the show from Motorola Solutions, also of the U.S. Air Force Reserve. You can't talk about much of what you do, which we understand for the U.S. Air Force. However, Lesley is a veteran in the security incident responder, digital forensics analyst, security education speaker and blogger, and a rattingly prolific Twitterer, I'm told. Did I say that right? Did I say that word right?
No.
Irritatingly. What did I say? I didn't even say English.
I don't know what you said.
we must all follow her immediately, I think.
That's a strange word. Come on now.
I'm working on
terrified
that. That's my
to
New Year's
turn 40
resolution to
with
use
what it's
smaller
done to
words.
Paul.
Yeah, you can't use big words like that. Lesley, welcome to the show.
I'm glad to be here.
Oh, it's not the first time I've said. There should be a clip
It's
of
not
me
the first time you've had a hard time
saying
saying big
dumb
words.
stuff on the show.
Second Life.
You could have some awesome clips of me saying dumb
Second
stuff
Life.
like that. Anyway.
Second.
Paul, talk to Lesley.
Sorry. Lesley, how did you get your start in information security?
I've actually, I hate telling my story because it's like the prototypical hacker story, and that's not normal. I started out programming when I was 7 or 8, and then it was a .com era, and I got picked up when I was about 14 as a developer.
Damn.
And I got involved really early on in the security community in Chicago. So obviously that all went to hell after the .com bubble burst, and so I enlisted, and that was a pretty good decision. So I had wanted to be in the security space for a long time, and I had been working towards it in a hobby kind of situation for a long time, and I'm happy to be in the field now.
Awesome. So when did you start doing, so what was the first kind of thing you did in security? Was it incident response and forensics, or was it separate or kind of together? I know they go together, but...
I worked in a NOC, then I worked in a SOC. You know, the very prototypical way to get into the blue team is, you know, just doing like SOC analyst work, handling tickets, taking calls.
That was very like Dr.
reversing.
Seuss. Do you have like a Dr. Seuss rhyme to talk about your early, like there was a NOC and a SOC? That would be awesome. No, that's really cool. So I want to talk with you a little bit about incident response. We did a segment actually on Enterprise Security Weekly late last year, but I want to get into a little more of the technical details on this show. And I want to ask you, like, what do most people get wrong when it comes to incident response?
They think it's an entry-level job. It's just something that you start out with in security. And really in-depth, any kind of hacking, the most important thing is having a lot of foundational knowledge and a lot of other things to be good at incident response. So you don't just go get your GCIH or something and become an incident responder. You bring in years of experience in all kinds of things, from networks to systems administration to security operations to pen testing. You bring that all together, and then you forget all of the minute technical detail because you become a glorified project manager. No, I'm just kidding.
No,
but really,
you're kind of right, yes.
Really,
go ahead.
That's really funny.
You have to become a jack of all trades and a master of few.
Yes.
Because you have to know a little bit of everything.
Is that one of the most difficult parts of incident response, is the coordination effort? That's what I've always felt. I wanted to get your take on that, though.
I love it, and some people hate it. It's like any niche in security, and you guys are talking about this all the time. Like, people find their niche, like whatever it is, whether it's exploit development or vulnerability research or physical pen testing, malware analysis, and you find that and it speaks to you and you do that, and that's going to be your area of security. But for me, maneuvering people and putting together a case, I like that stuff. I like taking all those different niches of security and melding them together to solve a problem.
And along those lines, communication is obviously a foundational element to incident response. How do you suggest to folks who might be building an incident response program that they communicate with all of the different parties that are involved when you're responding to an incident, from the technical security folks to the systems administrators to the network administrators to the help desk to management to the end users? Typically, all need some level of communications when there's an incident that has occurred or is currently occurring. What are the best way to build that communications infrastructure?
So I've got to kind of like channel Ed SCOTUS here. It's really, this is the reason why we have incident responders and incident handlers. So the incident handlers are doing much more of the outreach stuff and the communication stuff, while the incident responders are doing more of the technical coordination. And if you have both of those, your people who are doing the technical work aren't getting swamped. They aren't constantly trying to reach out to people because they have somebody who's doing that outreach for them the entire length of the incident. They're making the calls to HR and to the security team and to legal and to all the affected people in the organization. So that's why you dedicate people to those roles, and it's why it's worth the money, because otherwise your people are getting screamed at by panicking executives the entire time they're dealing with a data breach.
So in those different groups, such as legal, you don't recommend that someone from legal like kind of take point and be the incident handler. Like, this should be almost like a neutral sort of third party that can interface with all those different groups, right?
In my opinion, that should be a dedicated role, and you should have representatives from all those fields who you have contact information for and backups, so you know who you're going to call in legal at 2 a.m. on Christmas. But other than that, you should have a dedicated person in the security team who's doing the communication with those representatives.
Now, when we get into incident response mode, where, you know, like you said, all of these groups are doing their thing, they're all, in essence, collecting information, and especially as the incident handler, you sort of need one place to go to where you can look at all of that information and then disseminate it out to the appropriate parties. What tools do you recommend to collect information and track information when you're doing incident response?
So you need some kind of knowledge management system, obviously, and I'm not going to tell you which one of those is a better choice for you and your environment. The things that you have to look out for is making it completely separate from the rest of your network and from the rest of your ticketing systems. You don't want that. You want that air-gapped at the very least. You don't want any connection between the systems you're using in security for incident response and the systems that could be compromised during an incident. So, you know, you can use whatever you want. You can use a wiki, you can use SharePoint, you can use a ticket management system, you can use any kind of content management system you want, you know, weigh the security risks and your ability to administer it yourself, but keep it separate, keep it dedicated to that purpose, and have very clear guidelines about how stuff, especially malware samples, get posted to it.
That's interesting. And that's essentially to preserve that system from being affected by whatever incident you're going through, right? That being the worst case scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just, hey, is this system going to get ransomwared? It's like, are we dealing with an advanced actor who wants to go find the security team and find out where the state of the investigation is? I see a lot of incident responders at certain organizations I've dealt with who use email to send messages about an incident back and forth, and then they find out a couple weeks later that their Exchange server's been compromised. So, at that point, you don't know. Does the attacker know everything you've discussed up to that point if you weren't using encrypted mail? It's very possible they do, and you have to assume that they do. So
I'd argue they may even know if you are using encrypted mail.
True.
Depending on what level of access they have.
absolutely. So absolutely have good out-of-band communications. Pick something that works for you and you could administer in your price range and stick with it.
But then when it comes to notifying the end users and management, do you want to fall back on the way you would normally communicate with those groups in communicating pieces of the incident, or do you still keep some of that separate?
So that's like an ideal world versus reality kind of thing, and that's a big part of being an incident responder, is recognizing what's reality and what your ideal world is. You want to be using phone calls and fax machines not connected to that network to send that data. Can you really do that when you're trying to reach somebody in Malaysia in the middle of the night? Probably not. You might have to use text messages or email. You might have to use instant messenger, but you do your best. You try to keep that stuff out of band. You maybe send them an email saying, call me, and you have them call you on a landline that's not on the same network as the compromise is potentially on. So.
In incident response, and this is largely from my experience in incident response, Larry, I imagine you had the same experiences working for a university and in your other jobs, and
healthcare,
me working for a university as well,
yep.
right? You do incident response, but after you do a few cases, you're like, it's the same thing that's biting us time and time again, and it's not getting fixed. So for you, Lesley, like, what are some of those things that are, like, time and time again frustrating for you to see as the cause of the incident?
So I work at a managed security provider, so I deal with a wide range of things, and I've worked with a lot of different organizations. But you see the same problems, and those problems are usually coordination with management. Why we keep seeing the same things? Look at the target breach. Flat network, no VLANs. One subnet could entirely had no restrictions on accessing another sensitive VLAN or another sensitive subnet. And we see that all over the place. Nobody wants to spend the time to set up multiple VLANs and segregate their network. That's hard. That takes a lot of administration manpower. And so you see that a lot. And of course, everybody says the biggest risk to security is end users. And I hate that, because we exist to serve end users. We don't exist to do security. We exist to secure a business that has a business goal. And you can't just be like, my biggest security problem is people, because it might feel that way to you, but you exist to serve those people. So, you do what you can, and even if they pose a risk, you have to do your best to work within the confines of that business.
Kind of building on that is end users are, I don't want to say most often, but they are somewhat in the chain of events a lot of the time when we talk about phishing and things like that, which are oftentimes the way pen testers and attackers alike get into a network. What advice do you have for and people will come to me and ask me, like, how do I define what constitutes an incident? Like, and how do I rank that? And they're so overwhelmed with this task that they're like, what's best practice? And I'm like, well, what's best practice for you? But that doesn't really help them, define all of these things in their environment. And I'm sure, working for an MSSP, you get this question a lot as well.
Yeah, I agree. I get asked that a lot too, and I give pretty much the same unpleasant answer. But there are resources out there to help, even if they're not the best resources there could be. Like, you've got the NIST cybersecurity framework. You've got everything SANS put out there on incident response. So there's a lot of resources out there that'll help you define incidents. But really, when you're defining incidents, it's like the same process as securing your network originally, which is identifying your crown jewels, saying, what do people want to steal? Who could be targeting me? And getting involved in all the business units to ask them what's really important that they're doing. So the same process applies of finding out what's valuable and what could be targeted. And then that's how you define what an incident is. If we sell widgets, and widgets are how we make our money, then an incident is something that affects our widgets getting out there.
Right. No, that's some sound advice for sure.
Yeah.
I was going to ask a variation of that question. What's some advice for first steps? Right after law enforcement calls you and tells you you've been breached.
Which is always what happens, of course. Absolutely.
Yeah. So basically some
you
do's and don'ts.
You vet everything. You vet everything. You don't take anything at face value. You confirm all the evidence yourself, and you figure out what's going on. And before you do any of that, you calm the hell down. Don't panic is like my number one incident response rule. So you need to have a plan in place so that you're not thrown into a tizzy just trying to cope with the fact you might have been breached. You have those plans in place and you practice them over and over and over again so that when bad stuff happens, you respond without thinking about it. And so you get in there, you confirm that everything you've been told is true, then you figure out what's going on and you spend a reasonable amount of time figuring out what the hell is going on. Because usually when it's law enforcement that calls you, they don't give you a whole lot of information. They tell you you have something bad happening, and maybe they give you an IP address, and that's about it. So you really have to spend some time trying to evaluate what happened.
I love the don't panic. I'm told you have a background in practicing martial arts, and it's the same thing while you practice, is so that when there is a moment where something bad is happening, you react without thinking about it because you've been training.
And it's incident response is a universal thing. It's not just a security thing. And that's something that a lot of us miss, is that fire departments and police departments and stuff have been doing incident response training for decades, maybe longer. Military does incident response to like nuclear, biological, chemical. Those processes for training people to deal with really intense, high pressure situations have been around for a long time.
One of the foundational elements that when I speak with people at incident response somehow manifested itself into a multiple choice question, Lesley. So what's the most important thing in the incident response process? Is it A, knowing where your sensitive data lives, B, knowing which systems and applications you have and where they're located, or C, knowing who owns the data and applications, or D, all of the above? That was a pretty softball multiple choice question, I thought. But
I mean, like, the easy response to that is D, all of the above.
Right.
You need to know all those things just to secure your network. Like I said before, it's not just incident response. That's like, where do I put my sensor? Where do I monitor my network? So you've got to know all those things.
And the biggest struggle that I've noticed is the last one, knowing who owns all of your data and applications. I feel like a lot of organizations really struggle with that. Certainly when I worked for a university, it was a pretty large university. There was lots of systems, lots of departments. And I'm like, who owns that system? And I was like, I don't know. And then like you hear the stories of like the server that was built into the wall kind of thing. Like no one owns it. No one even knows it exists. It's inside of a wall. How do organizations, like, what is your advice for them to map it out? And mapping it out is one thing, but knowing who owns which data and which applications is a totally different thing.
It's hard. It's really hard. And that's where that human element comes back in again. And that's why security people need to be able to talk to human beings. You need to build those relationships with the other teams in your company. You need to not be the security guy who just blocks their websites who they hate. You got to try to build a relationship so they tell you what's important. I mean, even if it's like, I've had a lot of great success with like scheduling security lunches and just making them informal and being like, hey, who wants to come out and learn about hacking? And just inviting non-security people in the company to come chat about hacking and have a sandwich. It's worked really well. You want to build those relationships, and you want to be able to have conversations with people about what you really do and why it's important.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Joe. Is there a particular type of sandwich that draws more of a crowd?
One with meat.
Yes, definitely ones with bacon.
Bacon.
Yeah,
I find too that if it's the first time you've ever talked to someone who owns a system or an application, now you have to like start from ground zero and like work your way up. Whereas if you've already spoken to that person about really any security topic, it's a much quicker, much easier way to do incident response.
People get mad when you call them at 3 a.m. and you say, I have to shut off your network connection to your entire your entire production lab. They get really upset about that. But if you've sat there and had a beer with them before,
Right.
and you're like, I'm sorry, man, I know this is a really big pain. I know this is really disruptive, but hey, we've got this really bad thing happening and I really need your help. That makes a world of difference.
I completely agree. More questions on incident response for Lesley before we transition into how did you get started in forensics?
I wanted to do forensics back before anybody knew forensics was a thing. It was like the late 90s, and I was going to colleges, and I was like, I want to do forensics. And the computer science department was like, talk to criminal law, and criminal law was like, talk to computer science. And I bought all 4 books that were on Amazon, and I called police departments. I must have called like 15 police departments, and I was like, hey, can I please shadow you? I really want to do this. And they were like, what's your angle?
Yeah.
So it was a long, hard struggle to get into, but I've wanted to do that specifically for a really long time because I find it really, really interesting.
So I have to ask, we were talking with Doug White, I think last week, about some forensic stuff.
Yeah.
He did a technical segment.
Awesome.
And so what's your preferred method of data destruction given the available tools for data recovery?
My preferred method for I get to pick from any?
Any method. I have one that I really hope you talk about and mention, but...
Well, if I get to pick from any, I'm going to use thermite because it's just fun.
That's a good one. I was hoping for firearms.
That's enjoyable. If I'm living in a practical world, overwrite with random data one time, then or degauss and then put screw holes through it.
Mm-hmm. Or bullets. Bullets. I was kind of hoping you'd say firearms.
So I've always
the
wanted
Marcus
to do that
Random
talk.
approach, 50 BMG.
I really want to do that talk, and I'm trying to talk Scott Moulton into doing it with me. I want to shoot a bunch of hard drives and see how many actually destroy the platters with various calibers, but I think he thinks that's a very bad idea, so he's never written back to me, but...
I think that's a great idea. I think it's a fantastic idea.
Scott, you're insane. It's a great idea.
Totally do that.
No, really. I mean, platters are made of glass now on the drives that aren't SSDs, so they kind of shatter. So,
gotcha.
I still think it requires empirical evidence.
Yes.
I do agree that this requires a suitable study and then a talk, but
Paul, empirical. I'm sorry, that might be a little bit of a.
Yeah, that's way too big of a word for me tonight.
I can't stop you guys. I'm sorry.
Yep.
I'm trying. I'm drinking a lot so that I use smaller words.
So what are some of the, and I know this is kind of a somewhat controversial question, but, what are some methods available to thwart computer forensics investigation? And I know we kind of, when we talk about topics such as this, we're like, well, we're helping the attackers, but I also think we're helping the defenders as well understand where the limitations are.
Encryption, and more encryption. I mean, when you run into an encrypted drive, unless you're an intelligence agency, I mean, you're done. You're done. Unless you're able to get that code, that passphrase or whatever they use to encrypt the drive with. And even if you are an intelligence agency, I mean, who knows? There's very varying qualities there, but it's going to be a big pain. So yeah, encrypt everything. It makes my life miserable.
Doug's is our resident forensics expert, but the rest of the group, I don't know if you have more forensics kind of questions.
I had one which comes up from my world, which makes me crazy, which in a lot of organizations, even if they have in-house forensics and incident response teams, the traditional security team does not communicate with the incident response and forensics team unless there's an incident. And so there's this isolation. It's like, no, we're gonna call those people when we need them, but we're not going to use them or their contacts. Lesley, do you see that, and how do you break that down? Because the people that do incident response, the people that do forensics, have insights that those of us who do the more traditional defense stuff could really use to do a better job. But in enterprise, I often see there's this isolation, and we waste an enormous amount of time and ignore resources that are available. Is that something you battle with, and how do you overcome that?
There's a temptation to put e-discovery and that legal side of forensics in the same box as legal. and keep them in the law department and keep them isolated under NDAs. So yeah, I definitely have seen people do that. It's horrible, and I agree. It's really detrimental because it separates a large amount of security contacts and security knowledge from your security team. And man, forensics ability is so useful. It's so helpful in doing investigations. I mean, yeah, you've got like memory resident programs and, client-side security programs that show you what processes are running and stuff now that are available, but that's not the same as getting a disk image or a full raw memory image off a computer. So yeah, I mean, you want to have those relationships there. That's just a matter of slowly trying to break down those walls with your legal team, though, because, of course, they're incredibly secretive about data that might have to do with HR proceedings. And you've got to understand that e-discovery and digital forensics, while not the same thing, really do have a lot of overlapping skill sets and a lot of overlapping tools, and it can save you a lot of money to reuse those tools between the two teams.
I wanted to transition to topics of training. Full disclosure, SANS is a sponsor of the show, and
I teach for them.
Yeah, and several of our hosts teach for SANS as well. Along those lines, I know you're probably not going to answer this question directly, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Who is your favorite SANS instructor, given that you have multiple SANS certifications and have for some time?
Oh, that's vicious. Oh, my God.
She's drinking. She's like, I need more martini.
Paul, is that the question you decided to ask instead of the ask grabby question?
No, we're going to ask that question too. Lesley does not escape from the 5 questions.
No one.
As they are written.
No one escapes yet.
I'm ready. Okay, so I like a lot of SANS instructors, and I follow a lot of them, but everybody already knows that my personal hero is Ed SCOTUS, so...
Tough to beat. Tough to beat.
Yeah, he has
He's
a secret there.
That's hard to beat.
That's like my aspiration in life, to have like a secret hidden office that's full of steampunk stuff. So,
yes, he does have that going for him, and he's dashingly handsome as well, which helps. Sorry, did I say that out loud?
And he makes meth in the girl. No, he doesn't. Never mind.
Fascinating.
That's really what tips the scale.
Paul, I believe you might have a man crush.
Yeah.
I think they call that a man crush. So you wrote a great article on your blog, Lesley. Maybe you could summarize it, and people should go read it if you're going through a GX certification. But what advice do you have for students that are going through GX certification? And do I have to paint my fingernails? Because I felt like that was an important part of the process, and I totally did that. Is that necessary?
That is always an important part of the process to do anything in security, is having fabulous fingernails. So if you don't have fabulous fingernails right now, turn around and rethink your life.
We got to work on that.
But GIAC, first of all, people keep messaging me if they can just buy some random books online and take the test, and that's a really bad idea.
Well,
like the SANS curriculum is tied very closely into the GIAC tests, but your money.
Yeah, the answer is yes, you can, but will you succeed?
Probably
unknown.
Yeah, they will let you do it, but you'll probably be wasting a few $100s trying to do it. So it's better to somehow get go to a community SANS or something, or a SANS mentor program, and get the actual books to take the test with, because they're made to take the test with. And I'm not going to give them to you, because I'm not going to give you the books for free and get in legal trouble and stuff. So stop asking me, please.
You got a lot of interesting questions based on your blog post.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So what are some of the tips and tricks that you have in your post?
Okay, so obviously everybody who's taken a SANS class knows that you get the books, the test is open book, open note, and the books don't normally have table of contents or indexes in them. So if you want to look things up while you're taking the test, you need to have a really good index that you make yourself, so you know what page things are on, because there's always going to be something you haven't memorized, like a specific tool or something. So the real trick is finding an index system that works for you. I made my own index system. It might work for you, or you might like somebody else's. On my blog post, I link a few different types. Mine involves tabbing out sections of the book and then using a color-coded spreadsheet to show where each section of the book and each tool is. And that works for me. You might find something else that works for you, but definitely taking advantage of that indexing and also the practice test is super important.
Yeah, I completely agree. And in fact, it's funny, when I was reading your post, I'm like, oh, I did the same thing. But I want people to know this, and I'm certain you'll agree, that you can't just somehow bootleg copy the books illegally and then index them where all the topics are and then go take the test and think that you have like a really good chance of passing. You still have to, even though you have that, you have to know the material and familiarize yourself with all of the material in all of the course books in order to have a chance to pass the test. There's
no such thing as a dumb question, but I ask things that are very, very I get asked things that are very, very close about SANS tests. Like, you cheat, you're probably not going to pass. You don't study, you're probably not going to pass. It's a serious test, and it really tests if you know the material, not just memorization.
Absolutely.
Yep. Yeah. Based on that and my experience taking the exams, and not as an instructor, that there's not enough time for you to go to the books and look up every answer to every question.
Correct. It's a time-based test.
You have to know.
Yeah.
You have to know. And if you don't,
that's absolutely. I would agree 100% too. And it's funny that you said that because. Paul as well. I did exactly the same thing. I made colored tabs and went through, the several different ones that I've done. And that's absolutely the way you got to do it. You got to be rigorous about it.
So for you, I mean, obviously, Lesley, you've got achieved a lot of SANS or GX certifications. What was the value to you in your career for doing that?
It's actually obligatory in my role that I get one every year. So that's kind of awesome, and it's something to look for when you're picking out a job, what kind of training they send you to and what they require you take after it. So I am required as part of both my positions to get certifications on a regular basis and maintain them. So I don't get a lot of choice, but I find tremendous value in those classes, and I do have a choice about where I take my certifications, yada, yada, yada. So I guess it's an endorsement, kind of. I haven't found much security training that has more value for a week-long class. They really do have a lot of hands-on training, and it's really very practical. So.
Yeah. So my follow-on question to that is, and I agree, obviously, I've been a SANS instructor. A lot of us are SANS instructors here, and SANS has been a sponsor for a really long time. And I've personally been working with SANS for a long time, as has Larry and several others. But for me, one of the things that I struggle with, and I'm curious to get your take on, is what's the value in recertification? And there's actually something we talked with Jeff Frisk about when we had him on the show. But from your perspective, I know a lot of your certs you got years ago, but you've actually kept up with them. Something that I haven't done, and I've had a tough time justifying some of the value for me personally. But for you, like, what was the motivation behind keeping all of those certifications up to date? Was that a mandate from your job, or just something you decided to do?
When I grow up and I'm Jack Daniel, I won't have to do that, but I do want to have career perspectives in the future, depending on the way my life goes. As much as I love my job, you never know how life is going to turn out when you're, whatever age I am, ambiguous age. So you don't know how life is going to turn out, and you want to be prepared with a resume and good certifications all the time, just in case.
Right. Yeah. So it was a career preservation for you to keep those up as a contingency.
You get the books when you recertify. You get the current books, and you can read up on them and see what's new.
Yeah, I also, and I don't just like this for you, Lesley, but I also, the reason that I did them initially was I benefited from the structure. It forced me to take as much of a time out as I could from my job to go to the training, and then forced me to study the materials and take the test, and I had like a deadline to take the test. Like, I benefited from that structure and being forcing myself through the SANS curriculum to be able to do that. So I really liked that. For me personally, it's different for everyone, but it sounds like you're pretty similar in that respect.
If only you'd had such structure in your U.S. government and civics class.
I know. I wish SANS offered a class in government. I did correctly reference the Fourth Amendment today in a previous show, Jeff. You'd be proud of me. I did question it. I kind of phrased it as, like, that's the Fourth Amendment, right? Right. And Doug was like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, Fourth Amendment. That's what I meant. Right.
Good job. I'm proud.
I'm getting there.
Well, we are at least
prohibition, right?
We're at least familiar on the show with our First Amendment rights, and sometimes our second.
Well, and it wasn't as interesting as reading TCP/IP Illustrated Volume 1, twice, which was part of my. I don't know, Lesley, if you did the similar. When I was reading about your SAN certifications and which one you got, and then looking at your study guide, it brought me back to when I was studying for the exams and reading books like that, cover to cover to learn. So.
Yeah, I have horrible test anxiety, so I have to have a good system. So if it works for me, it's probably going to work for anybody.
That's good. That's good. Well, I'm thankful that you share that with everyone. I think it's great. More questions for Lesley from the group?
Do we want to shift out of InfoSec into like martial arts and marksmanship?
That's where I was going.
And she's doing the fist bump. So I
like
think
so many people, there's a lot more to Lesley than just being brilliant at what her day job is.
So Lesley, was really everyone kung fu fighting? That was my first martial arts question.
There were at least 3 people who were not kung fu fighting. I can confirm at least 3.
So which martial arts have you practiced or do you practice currently?
Currently, I practice Tang Soo Do. I practice Dakiti Tercia Serratus, which is a form of Arnis, and I practice Northern style Shaolin Kung Fu.
Really? Which style of Northern Shaolin Kung Fu?
It's a long fist style.
Holy crap!
Related to.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead, please.
I was just gonna. That's what I trained in here in Rhode Island.
Really? That's really cool.
So like, who is your?
I'll never be great at it, but.
It takes a long time, right? Was there? So you were saying, was there a specific teacher or like lineage that you practice from?
Sifu Chus.
Gotcha. I haven't heard of that one, but that's awesome. That's really funny. We have to meet up at a conference and compare notes. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
No, you have to meet up at a conference and spar.
And spar, that's right.
I want to see
if that happens, go easy on Paul.
My money's on Lesley.
Yeah,
exactly. Lesley, go easy on Paul. He's old.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
He did turn 40, so you've got to kick his ass.
After 3 kids, my time to practice kung fu has significantly diminished. So, yes.
So
and you don't have your pre-baby figure
Sans
back.
Iron Fan, and I don't know what happened to it. Like there
what
used
was
to be
that?
a Sans cert for martial arts, but it went
really?
away.
Really?
It's funny. I just brought my Iron Fan in today to show the guys because they were kind of like perplexed at the fan. I'm like, no. Like, guys, you haven't seen like an actual Shaolin Kung Fu fan. Like, it's not this like, it looks like a dainty thing that like you cool yourself off with, but it's really made of metal, and if you hit someone with it, you're really gonna mess them up. So what's your favorite martial arts movie? Do you get into Kung Fu cinema at all?
Oh man, that's a really hard question. God, Hero is wonderful, but lately, of recent movies, I really like Tai Chi Zero because it was just so cute and funny. It was just an adorable. It was steampunk too, and I really like steampunk stuff. So if you haven't seen Tai Chi Zero, that was really terrific.
Nice. I'm actually, I gave a talk and I'm going to be giving it this year. Everything I learned about security, I learned from Kung Fu movies. So I'll have to share the slides with you. Get a kick out of it.
I would really like that.
I see what you did there.
Get it? You get a kick out, huh?
Oh,
Yes.
God.
So you also shoot competitively, is that correct?
Yeah, not so much lately, but I have in the past, and I've also taught, and I've taught basic pistol, concealed carry, stuff like that. So
if someone's going
I ran a gun club for a while.
Nice. If someone's going to the gun range for the first time, have never shot before, what is some of advice you have for that person?
Throw out all your expectations and everything that you think you know about people who shoot guns and people who, and just shooting guns in general. Just throw out all of those preconceptions that you have and just go in there trying to learn something new, learning a sport, learning something that is useful in life. And certainly find an instructor that works for you, who you'd feel comfortable with. There's a lot of different instructors out there.
It's funny, my wife refused to take her initial lessons from me. She was like, I can't deal with it. She's like, I need to go take a class with someone else. And I'm like, whatever's comfortable for you. Because you're going to have a loaded firearm in the same room as me, and that could be in itself dangerous.
My answer is, Lesley, I'm sending you my wife.
Yes.
Cool, I'm down. If anybody wants to send their significant other to train with me, I'm happy to do that.
So I'm a huge fan of the Browning Buckmark. Is that what you shoot with?
Ruger Mark III, actually.
I could see the look on her face when I said that. I did that purposely.
I don't judge.
Nice. Very, very diplomatic.
But it's okay if you do.
Oh, that's funny. Jack or anyone else, did you have more questions for Lesley? I want to make sure everyone has equal amounts of airtime. No?
No.
Resounding no.
Well,
now-
I know. I was
Go ahead,
mostly
Joe.
thinking about the fact that my drink is empty, but Lesley is absolutely lovely. So this is not a negative comment upon yourself, but I do need a drink.
Good Lord.
We need you to have a drink
All
too,
right.
Joff. Yeah.
So, Lesley, 3 words to describe yourself.
Creative. Exceptional. And silly. There you go.
If you were a serial killer, what would be your weapon of choice?
A garrote.
If you wrote a book about yourself, what would the title be?
I didn't mean to do that.
In the popular game of Ask Grabby Grabby, do you prefer to go first or second?
Second.
Choose 2 celebrities to be your parents.
Alive.
Dolph Lundgren. And Ronda Rousey. She's not doing anything else right now.
Wow. Man.
That is so awesome.
Wow. I could make so many jokes about it just being over so quick, but that wouldn't be
Exactly.
appropriate.
But I'm so glad she didn't say Angelina Jolie, because I
Yes.
would have been like, no, it's
No, I gotta throw you guys a curveball sometime. So
That was really funny.
Somebody has to.
So, Leslie, are you speaking anywhere coming up at any conferences?
yeah, I'm speaking at B-Side Salt Lake City.
Nice.
Utah.
On?
Mr. J. Kennedy, and I will be speaking on how to take all of the crap that you think is not related to security and makes you an uncool hacker and making you an awesome hacker with it.
Nice. Very nice.
like that.
And, Leslie, where can people find more information about your website and your awesome Twitter handle?
Okay, so my blog is at tisiphony.net. And hopefully somebody tells you how to spell that. It's also linked on my Twitter, which is Hacks for Pancakes.
Nice.
And I'm pretty much on most social media under that handle.
Leslie, thank you very much for appearing on Paul Security Weekly.
I was really happy to be here.
Fantastic. We're going to take a short break, come back, and we're going to air a technical segment from Beau Bullock, so stay tuned.
Logarithm's Netmon Freemium delivers real-time network visibility to quickly identify emerging threats in your IT environment. Netmon Freemium is a free commercial-grade network forensics and traffic analytics solution. You can use Netmon Freemium's powerful capabilities to search against all of observed network traffic, identify abnormal traffic patterns and application usage, and quickly analyze full packet captures. Take the first step towards real-time network visibility. Visit logarithm.com/freemium to learn more and download it today. The Threat Connect platform enables organizations to identify, manage, and block threats faster with threat intelligence, automation, and orchestration, providing security teams a platform to unite their people, processes, and technologies behind an intelligence-driven defense. Threat Connect helps increase visibility into networks and integrates with defense tools to close the gap between threat detection and response. Get your free Threat Connect account today by visiting threatconnect.com/securityweekly. Endgame automates the hunt for both known and never-before-seen adversaries in enterprise networks. Built on unique knowledge on the adversary's tools, techniques, and tactics, Endgame's centrally managed agent prevents, detects, and responds to advanced adversaries at the earliest stages of the kill chain without prior knowledge. Endgame. Automate the hunt.
Welcome back, everyone, to Security Weekly. This technical segment on creating malware for Android that bypasses AV can be summed up by saying, yo, dog, I created an APK file inside your APK file. So with that, I'll turn it over to Beau.
All right, thank you. So this year I decided to start working with Android malware a bit. So my cash cow tipping was to bypass McAfee for mobile security. So to start out, I basically just generated a standard interpreter payload, which it's very easy with MSF Venom. You go through the standard process you would typically go through to create like a very general reverse TCP payload. So I did that, created an APK. And the thing to kind of remember with regards to this specific demonstration is that I was installing it from basically downloading it from a system that I controlled, not the Google App Store. So one thing you have to keep in mind is that you do have to enable untrusted sources to actually even run it to begin with. So, which, from a social engineering aspect is still a valid mechanism, I would suppose.
Because we do see a lot of organizations, Beau, that actually require their employees, especially technical employees, to download third-party software to actually run on their mobile devices. It's not completely unheard of that people would set this up.
Absolutely, and it's also not unheard of that you would have malware on the Google Play market.
Which is a question that you and I were bouncing back and forth on. Unfortunately, a lot of these different Google Play stores and the App Store, they really aren't that well tested and vetted as far as how much they're actually checking for malware in the apps that are dropped on those stores. It's one of those things that we would love to do, but our lawyers tell us it'd be a very bad idea to anger Google and Apple, and we don't want to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, hopefully this would kind of show how easy it is to inject a piece of malware into a valid APK, as you'll see in my demonstration here. So basically, I went to go install the malicious app, and McAfee caught it immediately. McAfee was like, nope, that's absolutely a Metasploit payload. Yeah, it's done. So I started looking at how you could, potentially modify the APK, and kind of dug into what was actually going on the very basic level of the payload itself. So I actually found that it's not that hard to decompile APKs with a tool called APK tool.
Just a quick jump before I jump to the next slide. There is a reference link with kind of some great instructions on how to do this down below.
Yeah. So that link is actually, I walked through this guide, and his guide is basically of just injecting an APK into another APK. But one of the things he didn't really cover was AV bypass at all. So there's one little thing that I do differently, but his article is almost identical to what I'm talking about. So very, very well put together guide on how to embed a Meterpreter payload into a valid APK. So the first thing I went and did is I grabbed the Wi-Fi Analyzer APK because it's a fun tool to install, and decompiled both those APKs with APK tool. Once you decompile them, the main thing you really have to worry about is getting your payload from the Meterpreter APK over to the Wi-Fi Analyzer APK. So you basically just go in and copy the Smalley files over to the Wi-Fi Analyzer APK. And one of the things that I noticed, and my AV bypass, is that the APK for the reverse interpreter payload includes the term Metasploit a lot throughout the actual Smalley files. So one of the things I did is I just changed all those terms from Metasploit to totes legit. And basically, once that was changed, most of the AVs seemed to not even care about it anymore. So you basically went in, modified the Smalley files to not have Metasploit anymore. So now that we've got all the payload files in the actual valid APK directory, the next thing to do is basically tell the Android manifest for the valid Wi-Fi Analyzer APK to run our payload. Just simply copying them over to the APK won't actually do anything. You have to actually go in and add in a spot where it basically tells it to launch your payload. So you go into the Android manifest, you find where the actual launcher Smalley is, and in this case it was this main screen launcher, which essentially, like, the second you touch the launcher button, this is the action that happens. So we go in and edit it. You can go to the next slide. Go in and edit the main screen Smalley, and then basically what you do is you inject a little hook that basically just says to run your payload in the main screen Smalley. So this main screen Smalley is the initial thing that's going to get run once you hit the launcher button, and basically that's going to run your payload. So you can see you have invoke static com totes legit stage payload. That is the actual interpreter payload injected into the valid Wi-Fi Analyzer APK.
And what's really sad about this is I can see all of the AV vendors like freaking out. They're like, okay, we need to go and write signatures for stage payload from this point on, because the Metasploit stuff clearly wasn't working.
Yeah, exactly. All right, next slide. And then the last thing you have to do is make sure that you add the specific Android permissions that are necessary for the payload to actually do fun stuff on the app. So you basically just go in and copy all of the reverse TCP permissions, which include things like access to your Wi-Fi state, access to the network, access to read SMS logs, access to read the call logs, contacts, that kind of stuff. Copy that over to the manifest file for the valid APK, and then simply just recompile it with APK tool again. So APK tool B Wi-Fi Analyzer, and it will build the Wi-Fi Analyzer APK back up, including your malicious payload in it. Now, the thing with Android is they don't really let you run an APK if it's not signed, but it's really easy to go sign it. You basically just create your own key and then use this tool jar signer to sign it, and Android's totally fine with it. It doesn't even matter what you actually you create the key with, meaning like you could make up an organization. So now go back to the Android device, run the Wi-Fi Analyzer APK. McAfee's totally fine, and we have a shell. And Wi-Fi Analyzer still works perfectly on the backside, which is nice.
How convenient. Runs.
Yes. I love, and I particularly love the other Android devices that,
Yes.
I think that needs further research. I was kind of enamored with that because, as I stated in the segment, I'm like, my friend, who may or may not run Kodi, that has turned off the third-party validation, and all others that have done that are vulnerable on whatever Android device that you have to do that. So.
Yep.
We're going to take a short break, come back, talk about our security news for this week. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere.
IT Pro TV, an easy, entertaining approach to online IT training. Access over 2,000 hours of up-to-date, high-quality video content live and on demand via Chromecast, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, PC, or your mobile device. IT Pro TV's premium membership grants access to all courses, transcripts, virtual machine labs, and transcender practice exams. Corporate and group pricing are available. For a free 7-day trial and 30% off the life of your account, visit itpro.tv/securityweekly and use the code SW30. Has your network been breached? Cybereason can help you answer this question. Cybereason products hunt for threats within your network and eliminate them in real time. To Cybereason, real time means within seconds. Founded by former military hackers who don't play by the rules, they've built this experience into their platform. Harness ingenuity and imagination, not just code, to defeat hackers. Cybereason. Disrupt the adversary and let the hunt begin. NetSparker, the developers of desktop and cloud-based web application security scanners that enable you to automatically identify vulnerabilities in your web applications and web services. NetSparker scanners employ a unique and dead-accurate vulnerability scanning engine that automatically verifies vulnerabilities with their proof of concept. For more information, visit them on the web at netsparker.com or email contact@netsparker.com. Onapsis, the leading provider of solutions to protect ERP systems from cyber attacks. Customers can secure their SAP and Oracle business critical platforms from espionage, sabotage, and financial fraud risks. Visit them on the web at onapsis.com.
We're back with the security news for this evening, or whenever you happen to be listening or watching this program. Jack had to drop off. I want to say that I think I've pretty much mastered the Negroni.
Pretty damn good.
This came up pretty good. And I want to ask him.
Let's see it.
I used gin. I don't know if he was substituting for bourbon in some of his.
So Paul, does this mean that we just sort of don't need Jack sometimes, but we still love him?
No, his Negronis are way better than mine still, but I made one that was actually drinkable as my crowning achievement. Before they were just god awful.
The bar was much, much lower.
Yes.
It's like I passed the drinkable phase. Okay, that's good.
Everyone's like, the bar looks so sparse, there's not enough booze at the bar. I'm like, there's totally enough to make a cocktail. I'm like, yeah, we got everything we need to make Negroni.
You've got like 4 weeks to get that bar restocked before episode 500.
It may take me 4 weeks to stock the bar well enough for episode 400, 500
because
rather.
we're coming. Actually, I suspect the morning of the 9th may well be several runs to the appropriate retail outlets to, help beef things up appropriately.
Or the day before. I'll be there the day before. I can do the liquor run.
Excellent.
Jeff, we should talk because I'll be flying in on the 8th as well. So
nice. All right.
Yeah, Bloody Marys in the morning. But Larry, you're not a Bloody Mary person, though.
No, but I can find someone appropriate.
You can find a morning drink. I mean, bourbon is just great.
Any time of day.
Doug and I were talking about dipping bacon in bourbon.
Yeah.
That's not a manly breakfast drink.
There is the what did we have at Circle City Con a couple years ago? It was a Jack Daniel bourbon, bacon infused Jack Daniel or Jim Beam. It can be done.
I actually have bacon infused vodka that I was going to use for Bloody Marys.
Oh,
I've had that and didn't like it.
Didn't like it.
We'll figure something out.
I have bacon flavored bourbon and it's fucking awful.
Well, D-Link is actually getting sued for not securing their routers.
This is interesting in that it's kind of groundbreaking, isn't it?
It is. The FTC actually on Thursday sued Taiwan in a federal court, alleging that D-Link routers and webcams left thousands of consumers at risk to hacking attacks. So just when Bruce Schneier and others were like, we need regulations, we need the federal government to do something, the FTC has stepped up and actually filed suit. Now, I find it interesting that no one else added the story. I thought you would for sure. The other story about, guess who's got a bug bounty now through BugCrowd?
Is it D-Link?
Netgear. So I don't know if Netgear caught wind that the FTC was suing D-Link and said, crap, we should do something about this and show the world that...
I think that is an excellent response, though, regardless of how they came upon it. I mean, why not? I mean, we've been sitting on the show saying, look, guys, come on, let's get it together. That's great. I mean, I don't know. Am I being naive, Paul? What do you think?
Well, it's very limited to a certain specific set of Netgear routers and wireless access points. It's only the latest firmware, and bug bounties go from $100 to $15,000.
150 to 15,000.
15,000. What did I say?
Right. You said 100 to 15,000.
$100 to $15,000. Sorry, for Netgear.
$150.
Oh, $150
is the minimum.
Is the minimum.
Yeah.
It's very structured. I was glad that Netgear actually worked with BugCrowd on this. I thought that was a great way to do it. However, it is limited. It's also limited to all of the latest firmware on Netgear routers, which is interesting. But still, I kind of was like, can I just spend the day looking at the latest Netgear firmware? Like, maybe if I find a few bugs, I can make some serious dough. But obviously, there's a whole process. But
what I've found, Paul, I've actually tried to engage in some of the bug bounty stuff, and I found that a lot of companies tend to put very heavy restrictions around their bug bounty programs, to the point where they're not like your typical pen test. If you dig into them, you find yourself having to really work for traction, and it's a significant challenge. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. I think it from a pen testing perspective, it's almost like the rules of engagement are so tight you can barely move. I didn't see that in the Netgear. I mean, they did put all of the firmware for those devices in scope. Which that's good.
And looking at the BugCrowd stuff, it appears to me to be significantly more detailed towards their video monitoring and their video stuff. Less about their access points, but more about their video.
There's two Nighthawks in there, though. There are two later revisions of the Nighthawks.
And the Orbi, but easily half of it is related to their wireless. But if you look out what they're paying and the payout and the expected outcomes, most of that is against their cloud infrastructure.
Yes, they put their cloud infrastructure in scope for their wireless gear, which is very interesting.
So looking at it, open redirection, SQL injection on firmware, web management, and client apps, CSRF against admin interface, cross-site scripting for users on cloud infrastructure, not firmware, web manager, web apps, SQL injection on cloud infrastructure, complete customer database with name, email, address, password, and products owned, single customer payment information, all customer payment information, 16-digit credit card numbers and CVV, unauthorized access to a single Netgear customer cloud storage video, unauthorized access to a single Netgear customer live video feed, remote unauthorized access to administer another Netgear's customer router via the publicly accessible internet. Unauthorized access to live video feeds on all Netgear customers, and unauthorized access to Netgear cloud storage videos files for all customers.
The other interesting thing is the FTC apparently 11 months ago settled with ASUS over its insecure routers. Attackers to remotely log into them. Also, the current claim against D-Link says defendants repeatedly have failed to take reasonable software testing and remediation measures to protect their routers and IP cameras against well-known and easily preventable security software flaws, which speaks volumes to Netgear's move to open their stuff up to a bug bounty program. Either maybe they're talking to the FTC or in anticipation of the FTC coming after them for similar things like they did against ASUS and D-Link, which... I mean, all of this is not... I mean, it's not the way that you'd like it to see it panned out, but it goes to show that federal agencies putting pressure on companies is absolutely one way to make sure that we get some security in these devices.
Yep. Yeah, so I sort of see it as the stick, not the carrot, right?
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly.
This is the stick. It's unfortunate, like you said, Paul, that it has to happen this way or has happened this way, but either way, I think we'll get there, and it is definitely a positive overall. I think a positive direction.
I got a question for probably Jeff and Larry. How often are you guys encountering these types of routers, devices? How often, when you encounter them in your pen test, are you doing more than Are you exploiting some sort of bug versus you're just exploiting because you've got the default password, or there is no password?
Yeah, that's I guess I'll jump in there first. First of all, for your first question, not often. It could be just the kinds of tests that I've been doing in the last 6 months or so that I really haven't encountered these sort of small office, home office kind of devices. And I think that's largely because of the customers that I'm working with. So that really obliviates the second question. That doesn't mean we haven't encountered them, though. There are tests we've encountered them. And quite often there's some first sort of level of entry is often some sort of web app vulnerability in an outward-facing management interface.
Yeah. So
over to Larry.
Yeah, so Jeff, I will find that we're very much the same. We find very few of them now, and again, that may be just to the level of our customers. But we used to find them with some regularity in enterprise networks, and most of the time smaller enterprise networks. But I'd argue that there were very few times, unless this was the only way in, that we were doing anything with these routers aside from saying, "What the hell are you doing using this piece of crap in here?" This is not enterprise grade gear. You need to think about something else, even if it's a small installation.
How often does gear in the enterprise? It's not home office gear. To extend Jeff's question, but how often do you find other embedded systems, or more likely than not, it's an embedded system, right? It's the ILO interface or whatever on your server or something like that, or a printer, right? Those devices are still in the enterprise, not necessarily the home. Yeah. The home gear is, but not to the extent.
Embedded stuff, something like ILO, we're all over that. Yeah. But something like a D-Link router or a Netgear router, we're either not finding them nearly as much as we used to, or if they've got that stuff in their environment, they typically have larger problems that we're trying to address as opposed to trying to exploit.
Well, despite Paul's attempt to pivot, the point I was trying to get at, and you guys kind of confirmed my suspicion. This is almost falls into our ongoing discussion of the Internet of Things as it pertains to the consumer landscape. Maybe it's small companies, small enterprises, small business as well, but
not entirely, Jeff. I will say that there are small operations, small branch office kind of like mom and pop outfits, to use sort of a cliche term, where we have discovered them. And the other context, and that's sort of from the external network context, the other context we have discovered these devices is the straight up rogue access point scenario. Yeah.
Yep. The other one I will say that even for some of these smaller shops that I've seen, the availability of enterprise grade or enterprise like gear that comes from some of these the more consumer focused stuff has gotten much better over the year. Like, think about some of the Ubiquity stuff and the Orbi, and Paul, what's some of the stuff that you're using at home?
I actually use Ubiquity at home.
Right, which is that stuff is more tailored to a small to medium-sized business.
In fact, I know consultants that do a lot for small businesses, and my friend Bobby is actually a huge fan of the Ubiquity gear for small restaurants and retail places as well.
And the availability, the price, and the quality of that gear has significantly changed the landscape, I think.
And I think we talked about this on the show before, specifically to wireless. There's a lot of the Netgear D-Link, Linksys, Asus stuff that comes off the shelf. When you want to take a step up from that, now, people, I think, are missing that middle step of Ubiquity because ease of use is not so much there on Ubiquity stuff. But there's all these newfangled things, like the one from Google. There's the one Eero. Eero's the other one. So they're much more expensive than Ubiquity. Yep. But claim to solve a lot of the problems and be easy to manage, but give you more of that enterprise kind of feel. Security-wise, I'm not sure where they fall. They're kind of new to market. I'm not sure if Netgear's Aereo, whatever they're calling it, is a similar play into that market. Orbi, sorry,
I think it is.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting in the wireless market. We're seeing scenarios whereby people have just houses, consumers that are big enough that throwing up one AP is just not going to do it. For that reason, I'm kind of a sick puppy, but I use a Cisco virtual wireless controller on my ESX server, and I just buy used Cisco APs off of eBay. But and I've got like 3 or 4 of them in the house, and got PoE. But I'm kind of a sick puppy in that respect.
Ubiquiti's pretty similar, Joff. They're all PoE devices, and they give you software to manage them. And I think that what's driven that largely is the number of devices in the home, and not just the number of devices, but the requirements that everyone wants to stream Netflix and Amazon and all this other stuff, and have Alexa devices. So now your wireless requirements at home go above and beyond that $50 AP that you had before.
Mm-hmm. That's right. One AP in the corner is just not going to do it. In the corner of your laundry room or something, it's just not enough coverage, and it's not enough. So you need the intelligent handoff stuff. You need to be able to roam, and probably 2 or 3 APs in somebody's house is typically what's going to happen these days. So
it'd be interesting when they start building homes today and just building wireless right into the home. It'll be like electricity. I think it'll just be in the home.
That is an interesting point, because it's people certainly treat internet connectivity that way, and so the expectation is absolutely there.
I think the cost of running Ethernet jacks like you would run phone jacks, you probably want to skip over that entire step and just be like, well, instead of having 10 runs to all the different rooms and spots in the house, we'll just make 3 runs and bring them back to a separate point and cover it with 3 APs, and there's just a standard blueprint that, a standard system that people have, and they are off to the races. So anyway, let's talk politics.
Why not?
Yay.
More politically, politically related to politics, I should say. The NSA is given more ability to share raw intelligence data. So President Obama, which I think is interesting, is that after the Snowden leaks happened, and Jeff, you and I were talking about this, I think, last week, right? There was laws or regulations that were put into place to reduce the ability of the NSA to essentially spy on people's information in the United States. However, President Obama has changed the rules regarding the raw intelligence, how NSA shares that data with the U.S.'s 16 other intelligence agencies. Basically, most analysts that are commenting on this are pretty much what Bruce and I are saying, is that from a privacy perspective, this feels like a really bad idea to me.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you a philosophical question. Anybody can pipe in. We know about the type of information that's collected about us, or the typical consumer user on the internet, especially if we're using things like Facebook or various social media outlets, Google. Why are we more concerned that the government might capture certain information about us that some of us might say is somewhat innocuous, versus some of the major social media companies or internet providers and so forth?
I'll take that one. So,
and I'll also have an answer to that.
Okay, so it's that whole thing with privacy. So as long as, if I'm giving you my data, or I'm willingly putting that on a social media outlet, if I know who's seeing that data, how it's being used, then I can make an informed decision. I think the concern when the government gets involved is you may not know what data they're collecting, how they're collecting it, how they're using it, or who they're sharing it with. And I think that fuels some of the concern, Jeff. And certainly, I think I see your point, Jeff, is that if you're an individual, you have a Facebook account, you have a Twitter account, and you're sharing information out publicly, if a government agency like the NSA is collecting all of that public information and analyzing it, then that's, okay, that's fine. I've made the decision to share it publicly. I've read Facebook's privacy profile and understood. But if the government or Facebook or some other third party has access to that data without my knowledge, or access to more of that data without my knowledge, maybe what I've marked as private isn't necessarily private, then that's where the privacy concerns are coming from.
Right, and I think maybe a little bit different from Lee. For me, you talk about the types of those communications, the public stuff you post to Facebook that everybody can see, and you put it on Twitter, and all of those types of things. But something like maybe my Google search terms, or a instant message conversation, a Facebook Messenger conversation between Paul and I, not being, quote, public, great, let Facebook mine that data and then serve them ads based on that. But when it's a law enforcement agency potentially that's getting to, that becomes a little bit of a change in the scenario. Let's say I'm asking Paul for, Paul, I need a fully automatic weapon. Can you get me one? Facebook probably doesn't have a lot of duty to report that if it's via instant message. But if all of a sudden that gets turned over to the NSA or something of the like, then, well, that's a little bit different story. They're going to use that to tailor a profile against me that's a little bit different. Mm-hmm. So I think it ends up, being about the type of data that's being accessed and used and who has a right to report and how some prosecution might happen.
So,
just a thought.
So one comment back, we're not normal. We're not the typical internet user, social media user. And probably most of our listening audience is not what I would call the typical user.
Yep.
Let's say you're Googling automatic weapons, and then all of a sudden you start seeing ads for automatic weapons. There's so much information that's captured about us that most of the public doesn't really understand what's being captured about them. We have some more awareness of that, and to some degree then that gives us the responsibility, and that's why we're concerned about it and why we advocate for or against it. But I still have this sort of fundamental philosophical issue with, and maybe it's because I worked for the DoD, but I don't see a huge difference between the government capturing information about me versus all these companies out there on the internet that are capturing information about me. I don't see a whole big difference. Either it's all good or it's all bad. I live with it or I don't.
Well, the big difference is that you could be prosecuted by the federal
depending on
government.
Who gets it. Yeah, depending
not
on who
as
gets
likely
it.
that Facebook is not a law enforcement organization, for example, and I think that's some of what's fueling it.
Right, and that was sort of my take. Again, who has the information and what their responsibility to act is. Now, granted, there are certain things that Facebook and such would be required to act upon, child pornography and so forth.
Right.
But other things they may not.
Emails and phone calls too are separate from what you're sharing on social media, and there should be some kind of process in our laws that Jeff could fill you in on, because I suck at that, about wiretapping laws, issuing warrants and things of that nature, that the government agencies have to go through a process in order to do that. And I think there's a lot of gray area in terms of all that information that we have. Like, should a phone call be treated as an email, be treated as what I mark as private on Facebook? Are all those treated equally? Do they require the same or similar processes for a government agency to obtain those in support of an investigation?
That's sort of a whole different can of worms to open up, Paul. Telecoms that are providing our mobile devices, which these days are not only are they and have they been doing all along capturing all your phone call information, not necessarily recording the call, but certainly
your phone records, right?
Your phone records, who you've called, the metadata. That's all always been captured, and that data has been there for law enforcement to gain access to
with a warrant,
typically with a warrant, with Correct. A court order. But these days it's and for great reasons and maybe not so great reasons, they're also tracking you most of the time because you've got GPS built into your phone.
Yep.
And is our very movements part of a privacy issue? I think most of us would say yes.
Yes, and I would advocate for the same level of process that government agencies have to get a warrant to get access to the phone records. There is certainly a fairly well-established process for that. But like you're alluding to, Jeff, there's now, with technology, all these other things that are being collected about us, and where do they fall in the process? Some of them might be falling outside of the scope where they don't need a warrant. So I think it's an interesting issue.
I guess my point is, though, just in terms of mobile cell phone data, that data has always been captured by the telecom providers. So you have a certain type of organization that's capturing it, which in and of itself is a privacy issue. Whether it gets turned over to the government, law enforcement, or intelligence agencies that may or may not be able to prosecute you is a different level. But why are we okay with the data being captured at any level by any type of organization? All right, prosecution, that's one answer, but beyond that, what are the reasons why we worry about it with the government and why we don't worry about it with other types of companies that simply just want to get our money?
The other politically kind of related story was that President-elect Donald Trump has selected a director of Homeland Security. Did I get that right? Secretary of Homeland Security.
That's right.
John F. Kelly. And largely without a whole boatload of criticism and bipartisan support, which I think relates to our field, certainly, as the Secretary of Homeland Security. Certainly will have interactions with our field and the general cyber drink security of the nation.
So, Paul, just for your edification, when the title is Secretary, that means it's a cabinet-level position.
Okay, what does that mean, Jeff? Enlighten us.
They work in the kitchen with cabinets.
Yeah.
They work with cabinets.
Does that mean they make cabinets? What is
Usually they're wooden. They're made of oak, cherry.
Exactly.
Sometimes they have solid doors, sometimes glass doors. Sometimes they don't have any doors at all.
I gotcha.
Yeah. What I think Jeff really means, unless I'm mistaken, is executive branch level cabinet.
It's executive branch. It's close. The cabinet is what the close advisors, the heads of all the different departments. I honestly admit I don't know how many cabinet level positions there are these days, because they seem to make them up as they go along sometimes. Right. Certainly the Department of Homeland Security didn't exist 17 years ago.
Correct.
Yeah, I was going to say, make sure you get that marker right. That's 2001.
Well, I could probably have said 16 years ago and been safe, because 9/11 happened in September. And here in case you didn't know, Paul.
And here we got the Ferner giving us civics lessons here.
And no, wait, I had to take the test.
But Joff had to take the test. So he probably knows more than all of us about civics and government.
Yep. Well, you know what was really funny, and I'll tell the story very briefly. I did take the test in 2007, I think it was, maybe 2008. So it's been several years. But so there's 150 questions that you have to study up on in civics to take the immigration test in the United States. And they select 10 random questions to ask you. And as a part of that test, there's an English competency measurement. I don't know what exactly that is exactly. I mean, just that you have to be able to speak English, which...
American English.
American English, right?
Yeah.
So what was amusing to me is they chose the 10 questions. They were Mickey Mouse, questions like how many members of Congress are there? How many senators are there in the Senate? If the president is killed, what's the order of succession? Those kinds of questions. And then the English competency test was given to me, and by a Russian speaker who could barely speak English herself. Which I found incredibly amusing. So there it is.
But getting back to Paul's point, yes, I think the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security is probably a position that would interest our community. So what do you have to say about it?
No, that's all I did was the article didn't say much else that was the appointment, and that largely there was no controversy around it, which is why we don't have much to comment on, because there hasn't been commentary on it. The media hasn't thrown rocks at it, and it has some bipartisan support according to the article, which could be good. I don't know. Yep. Could be bad.
So I was going to say speculatively that's potentially good, right? An appointment that is bipartisan support and solidly people are behind it. Then that's a good thing. It's good to see.
The other article that's politically charged,
which I was just laughing about because I saw you Googling
words in here.
Googling either the meaning of or the pronunciation.
Both. Chelsea Manning.
He was Googling the pronunciation of speculative.
No, get this. Chelsea Manning is on President Barack Obama's short list for commutation, which is...
Go back to Google and look at the pronunciation again.
Commutation. You're good.
Commutation, which is the action or process of
Becoming communist.
Commuting a judicial sentence. So, in other words, reducing his sentence, correct?
No,
Or
setting him
delving.
free.
Yeah.
Setting him free. So, relieving him of her of the sentence.
Well, time served.
Gotcha.
But
I
basically, the tradition for presidents leaving office is to I don't know. and I don't know how this
Effectively
started,
issue him a
but-
pardon.
Yeah, basically, it's a pardon. They let people out of jail that they think have paid their debt to society.
their dues.
And the president can do that for, I mean, not for
Anybody.
for anyone. For anyone
do it for
in the
anyone.
U.S., obviously, right?
The president can do what they want.
In terms of
Yes.
convicted people of a crime, whether federal or not, right, can pardon.
Effectively, I think you could petition the president to commute your parking tickets if you really wanted.
I gotcha.
Yeah,
That was a good use of the word.
I understand that
I had
the
to see
president,
someone use it in a sentence.
I understand from my reading that the president, in the last 3 to 6 months of his tenure, gets deluged with commutation
Right.
requests.
Because he's like, I'm out, drop the mic.
Yep. All you bitches
So-
free.
So Edward Snowden, your favorite person, Jeff, has on Twitter encouraged the president to commute.
Just like you do when you
Which
get in your
means
car and you go to work.
travel to.
Chelsea Manning.
Is that right?
That is right.
So, what do you know about Chelsea Manning, Paul? Who is Chelsea Manning?
Well, I think when she was Bradley Manning, is accused of leaking military secrets to WikiLeaks. For
So-
anything I can remember from that story.
Yeah, I only know because I saw a news piece on this last night.
Gotcha.
I don't look. I have to weigh in on this as the token Australian as well. Being that Julian Assange is Australian, I don't support what he's doing, and I think WikiLeaks is somewhat irresponsible, to be honest. So the leaks that are going there certainly are feeding a market. They're feeding a social media market, and there are a portion of it, in my opinion, is healthy. But there is certain level of irresponsibility that I cannot support and get behind.
That's correct. And how do you put that responsibility on essentially rogue third parties that are coming in contact with information and making the decision as to whether or not that information becomes public? And
Exactly.
is that it's up to them now, once they possess that information, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, and what are the repercussions to that, which make it very, very scary. I agree with you, Joff. I think some of the information is beneficial to the public and beneficial to our rights and privacy or whatever, and when it becomes public. However, which of that information is very harmful to people in the field, people trying to protect this country, and things of that nature, military operations.
That's right.
That's the crux of the issue, and why a lot of us take issue with that, is that whole process of...
Yeah, so putting the Australian hat on for a minute, what a lot of people don't realize is there...
Is that the one with the flap up on the one side?
Yeah, it's one with the flap up on the side.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was
What
a
a lot of
knife. Was it a Bowie knife? You're going to adorn your Bowie? Now that's a knife.
That's a knife.
Pull out my Bowie knife. Yeah. What a lot of people don't realize is Australia is somewhat of a cultural bubble. It's a beautiful place. It's isolationist in that Australia does not have to deal with many of the world problems that the Northern Hemisphere has to work with. And in that context, I think Julian Assange is, while an intelligent man, is operating in a semi-naive fashion. And by doing that, is not really it's sensationalist in many ways, but not really taking into account the responsibility aspect. I mean, that's basically my opinion, and I think it's informed by his cultural background and his citizenship, and understandably so. I mean, I have certainly a deep understanding of how Australia views the world, and it certainly is an isolationist view in many ways, and it's somewhat naive, and unfortunately, Julian sort of falls into that viewpoint, I think, and it disappoints me the amount of press that it's gotten.
But couldn't you say much the same thing about Snowden?
Certainly. Mm-hmm. I don't know what Snowden's cultural ethnic background is. I mean, American, obviously, but American. I don't know. Say that again, Jeff.
American,
yeah.
American.
But certainly he's probably been influenced by these sorts of things that drive him to reveal information that's maybe not such a smart idea. It really depends on how much you buy into, who's right. Okay, it gets very deep because from a naive perspective, people have to think that everything should be published. And that, I think that's certainly a very Australian cultural viewpoint. Not. I wouldn't say universally. There's certainly Australian intelligence services and other people that are in the know that would not hold that viewpoint. But as a general run-of-the-mill citizen in Australia, I think that's an open society is definitely in Australia's viewpoint, and I think Julian sort of plays into that cultural facet, very uniformly in line with his upbringing and his culture. But unfortunately, it does not suit the politics of the Northern Hemisphere, and does not necessarily suit the politics of the United States.
Next up on The Hook, we talk about the Russians hacking the U.S. election. I'm kidding.
Well, you guys thinking I'm off the planet right now, but
no. The news in the last day or two has been this 2-page dossier that has apparently been around for months, and nobody knew what to do with it. That's from supposedly, was it a former British Secret Service special spy, James Bond agent that had information, and was it BuzzFeed that eventually decided to publish it? But I'm thinking, well, what if it had come out over WikiLeaks? Because certain people in the political realm seem to think more highly of WikiLeaks and are bashing BuzzFeed for their irresponsible. This is not confirmed information, and it's become kind of it's a freaking mess, is what it is.
I think it opens up the question.
Dossier, a collection of documents about a particular person, event, or subject, just for those in my camp. Just kidding.
So let me interject real quick, because I heard something there about some dossiers and so forth. But what's the difference between garbanzo bean and a chickpea? I mean, seriously, do you know? I've never heard a garbanzo bean in my bed.
I'm pretty sure garbanzo is just Spanish for chick.
No, I've never had a garbanzo bean in my bed.
But you've had a chick pea in your bed?
Other than for why?
He got me with that. Did you see what he did there?
Yep. Yeah. Speaking of said dossiers.
I think everything that's happening publicly in social media right now is sort of opening up that question of whether we should depoliticize information categorization and information intelligence, and if we should continue to flatten and publish openly and transparently the things that are happening in the world. And it's certainly a question to be asked. I don't think it's a question that's going to be answered, because every country on this planet has an intelligence community and has a program and have their reasons to classify information and withhold it and keep it to themselves. And those reasons are geopolitical reasons that do matter for the safety of citizens, no matter what country you're living in.
Larry, I almost read that as celebrities, but Celebrite has been hacked.
You know how many times it autocorrected to celebrity?
You know how many times I looked at your stories and said I wish it was celebrities, because when celebrities get hacked, it makes for great fodder for the show.
900 gigs of celebrity data?
Celebrity would be awesome to talk about.
Well,
bad for celebrities
like I'm being way too serious for the show right now, so I'll stop talking.
In any case, it may end up being a lot of celebrities, because apparently a hacker. It's an ongoing investigation from Cellbrite, apparently, but Cellbrite had got hacked and apparently had 900 gigs of data exfilled, including all sorts of stuff about what people owned, what phones, images, emails, SMS data from captured devices, which customers were capturing from which devices. Crazy amounts of stuff. And if you think about this, like the types of folks that use Cellbrite, like I can think of at least one or more law enforcement agencies that use Cellbrite to start doing some of this stuff. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. But
this would have been a great question for Lesley that she probably couldn't have answered.
Yeah.
And then, Larry, you had on there smart meters.
Yeah, so, of course, my browser's being completely bad. But there was a talk at, 33C3 right after Christmas in Germany about a gentleman who basically got up on stage and said, hey, this whole thing with the smart energy and smart meters and stuff, this is really bad because there's, oh my God, hacks against smart meters, and basically dropped, to the best of our knowledge, a whole bunch of FUD.
Interesting. I thought you were going to say Ode, but I kind of had a feeling you were going to say FUD.
A whole bunch of FUD. One of the things that he was saying, like, oh my God, people can hack into your smart meter and turn it into a bomb.
Okay, how exactly?
Exactly, and he was very adamant about it, and that this is going to be a bad thing, and from what we sort of got out of that, or I got out of that, and I have yet to watch the video, I've only taken the, quote, circumstantial evidence that he was way off base about some of the things that he was saying, talking about, making a meter explode by modifying the software running on the device.
Melt, maybe. Explode.
I would even argue not even melt.
Yes, because there's usually hardware, like with printers, hardware protections that prevent it from melting.
Protections,
yep.
Right.
Yep. Typically faulty installation, physical installation as opposed to software, and he was saying that he stated the large part of it was he stated a lot of things that were highly inaccurate. And if there were any accuracy to it, he was completely twisting it to his own will, which was complete crap.
In other words, it was a presentation driven towards, sensationalism and gaining the microphone, so to speak.
Right, and arguably he's getting his day in court, right? Because we're talking about this story on the show, and giving him his, quote, lip service.
All press is good press.
Yeah, all press is good press, and I think many
the
people were thinking
you're looking for is the 15 minutes of fame.
Yes.
Now that said, in this case, all press is bad press.
Googling metaphor.
Yeah. No, stop.
In this case, all press being, or bad press being, or all press being press, and bad press being good press, and all that type of stuff. I mean, this could potentially have ruined this guy's career.
Oh, it could. I mean, you have to be careful. All press is not always good press.
Right. I mean, tell me where the Tracer T guy is right now. I mean,
he went places, clearly.
Yeah. I mean, I don't. Yeah. Potentially damaging. This would not be the career path that I would choose.
So the security community, I think, in general, is kind of unforgiving in that respect.
Yes.
We demand excellence, and we expect people to produce, and if they don't, we kind of ignore them.
Hey, Joff, I got to ask. So, Luke Baggett, is that any relation to Mark or no?
Luke Baggett is certainly related to Mark, and he would be Mark's son.
Really? Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well,
yes, sir.
And Luke works for Black Hills?
Luke has interned for us for some time and does various tasks as assigned. So yes,
Paul is always so excited when he hears that hackers have procreated.
That's right. Yes, that's a good thing.
That's certainly the case. Luke is a very, very smart young man, and we enjoy working with him.
And he wrote a fantastic article, which in fact I had a chance to read and dig into on PowerShell DNS command and control, and he created, in fact, a PowerShell module that allows you to do command and control over DNS via PowerShell, which I thought was really cool, and even extended it to some other features that are inside of PowerShell. Wrote a great post on blackhillsinfosec.com, which you can find linked to in the wiki. Joff, I don't know if you're familiar, since you work at the same organization as Luke, with this post or any of the technical details.
Yeah, well, I have not actually read the post, sadly, because I've been very heavily involved in a lot of mobile application testing lately. But the fact that it exists in such detail does not surprise me at all. Luke is a really hard worker and just a really smart guy. So I'm hats off, basically. I think Luke's great. He's got a good future.
Yeah, and what I thought was interesting too was built into the code is the ability, and I'm not sure if this also existed in Ron Beau's original library as well, to basically vary both the size and type of your DNS queries that allow you to avoid detection. I mean, not specifically, but attempt to evade detection. I'm sure if people put their minds.
I don't remember.
Do that. But so I thought that was really cool. It's a great post. I
think DNS. By the way, DNS is a exfiltration channel, is command and control channel, is really a fantastic vector. I mean, how many organizations are going to stop DNS? Let's think about that.
Zero. Even monitor and analyzing DNS is tricky. And you have to specifically, because our software does this actually at OCM, does that statistical analysis of looking at like hosts to DNS ratios and queries of certain types or to certain servers that are greater in number than your typical DNS query. Has always been one way to do that, but actually to put that in an enterprise context and be able to monitor that is certainly something you have to specifically set out to do or have software that lets you do that easily.
Yeah, by the way, I wrote the prototype of that code, and what we do is we count DNS queries on a peer station basis, and so the way to look at DNS command channels is to use a heuristic statistical kind of approach where you count queries across the enterprise and you compare the peer stations to each other, and then you just do basic stats, max, min, mean, median. And then if anybody has a query type that differs from two standard deviations, then they clearly are an outlier, and you flag them, right? And that's I wrote that prototype code that the guys are using, but and mine was a slow-running Python script. But their stuff is much more sophisticated, obviously. But that the heuristics is the way to look at it. You can't do it based on content anymore because it's very easy. Like, let's say you use like DNS ID and you do like some sort of blowfish or AES symmetric encryption in the DNS ID field. There's no way you're going to spot that with the data because it's statistically flat by nature, and the randomly chosen DNS ID is going to be statistically flat anyway. So. It's a wash, right? So your only way you're going to look at that is the frequency of queries, and look at the behavior from a statistical basis in terms of quantity and query types, and so that's kind of where we were going with that. So I'm sorry, I went on a tangent, but
it's great.
I had to talk about it. Yeah,
there might be a way to detect that, but I don't want to geek out on randomization statistics. Another time.
I thought he said random animization.
Random. No, that would be Paul will look at
That's one of my words, dude.
That was the name of a girlfriend I once had. She was Random Animization. She was awesome.
I'll just say, in a former place of employment, there was such a thing as super random, which was more random than random, which was an indication that it was machine generated or human generated rather than random.
Yeah, you're kind of talking about the orbital theories in mathematics, right? The random, pseudo-random number generators have certain behaviors.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Okay, well, enough of that. Enough said.
Enough about that.
I totally get what you're talking about.
The shadow brokers have essentially given away all of their malware, most of which is actually detected by most modern AV systems, which is kind of funny for a lot of reasons. One of which is, when I read this, I was like, well, what if you took some of the techniques that we talked about in our recent webcast, which I think was last week, and morphed some of these payloads? Could you bypass AV? Probably. But they did basically like drop the mic, say we're retiring, and here's all of our malware.
Well, that's really cool, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, putting the pen tester hat on, it's like, wow, you just dropped all your malware. Sweet. Let's take a look.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. I'm not sure why you would do that as a group, a hacking group. I don't know. Maybe they're
there might be a little bit of bureaucratic frustration there, so they're like, fuck it, we're going to put it out for the world. Mm-hmm. I could see it.
Maybe they're fleeing the country.
Could be, yes.
Assuming they live in the U.S.
Maybe they're joining Snowden Inc.
Wow.
Not much else in here. Oh no, there is one more story. That we have to mention. The peace sign. This headline is terrible. This must come from the Register. Yes, the peace sign selfie fools menaced by fingerprint harvesting tech. So in other words, what this article is about is when I hold up the peace sign, now everyone has my fingerprint, right? Because basically, if you take a selfie with the peace sign up, your fingerprint is there, and they can blow up the picture and basically recreate your fingerprint.
You could also probably do it with the Vulcan "Live Long and Prosper" sign then,
right?
Too.
Or like a wave, maybe provided you're not moving your fingers around, like it'd be.
So if you're doing a selfie, you should really just do the ultimate salute.
That's right.
I was about to say, I think the U.S. had it right all along. Turn it around.
Maybe the new peace sign needs to be this way. It needs to be this way so we don't give up our fingerprints. That's what I was advocating.
That means something completely different, Paul. Google it.
This one,
the rocker, the shocker, the spocker.
There's an old movie. It might have been from before you were born, Paul. I don't know. It was from the 80s, I think. I want to say the movie.
No, I was born in the 80s. I was born before the 80s, actually.
I want to say the movie is called Malibu Express. Somebody can Google it or IMDb it. But in it, there's a character that knows like 50 different ways to flip off people, in terms of sign language. Based on different nationalities. It's kind of that's probably the only redeeming part of that movie. Somebody should go.
So again, being the token dual national, in Australia, if you do this, you're okay, even though people can now get your fingerprints. But if you turn around and do this, that's no different than this in the U.S. So,
interesting.
And former President George Bush actually went to Melbourne. I don't remember the particular date, and he did this.
Bush, junior or senior?
That would be junior.
Gotcha.
And it was not received in a positive light.
I can't imagine why.
Yeah.
Well, now that we've talked about hand gestures and really nothing about...
hand gestures.
Did you take that question to get citizenship, the test to get citizenship, or just a green card?
No. The civics test was taken to obtain citizenship. The green card was purely a paperwork exercise. It was an extensive paperwork exercise, but...
so how many people are in Congress?
435, I think.
We'll go with that. We're going with Johnson.
That was about right. And, of course, there's 100 in the Senate. But so, yeah. Well, I mean... it was interesting to have to go through it. My kids, this is years ago now, but my kids enjoyed it immensely because they were at that time in school where they were taking civics as well, so they got to quiz.
They were quizzing Dad.
Yeah.
Dad was getting it wrong.
No, Dad. It's wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, that was the last one that other than there's bugs in Adobe Flash.
Not news.
Really?
No,
I was just like, that was more, speaking of nostalgia, like, that was more of my nostalgic, like, there's still, we think about how we've talked about Adobe Flash bugs since episode 1 or 2, and here we are in episode 496, and there's still remotely exploitable bugs in Adobe Flash.
Yeah, 496. Yeah.
Wow. Outstanding.
It's also the number
400 Oak Street.
of bugs in Flash per year on average.
Yeah, 400 Oak Street. Yeah, I drive my car in the driveway on Sundays. Yeah,
So, I think any of us that give InfoSec presentations should just start opening up with the line, Adobe, the gift that keeps on giving.
It does.
Every time.
In the Microsoft Edge browser, which is just atrocious to use. I don't know how anyone uses that browser, to be honest.
Well, they do. They use it to download Chrome or Firefox.
Mm-hmm. That's about what I use it for. Apparently, Flash content now will be click to load, because that's going to stop people from loading Flash content.
Yeah,
I can't even say that one straight face.
You have to want to be hacked.
Why is this not loading? Click. Oh, hey, look, there it is.
Hey, look, I'm pwned. It's great.
Don't click shit, but you have to click shit.
To watch the cat video or whatever. We were talking about those ridiculous videos where people like wrap up an avocado and give it to their kid for Christmas and they start crying, which I just think is just so wrong.
Well, I mean, let's face it. People are going to either browse kittens on the internet or look at Trump tweets, and that's really going to be about it. So
click to load. Click to load.
I kind of wish we'd all refuse to look at Trump tweets, but that's just me.
Wow. I think we just went. Yeah.
I think we all know what most people look at on the internet, and it's definitely
it's not Trump
tweets.
It's related to kittens.
It may be Melania Trump, but that's a different story altogether.
Wow.
Wow. Ooh, Ivanka.
That too.
Oh, boy. Well, that concludes this edition of Paul Security Weekly. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Larry, take us out.
Over. And out.